Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 66 of the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. All right, started working on this base, and pretty sure we're going to be able to make it work. Got down enough here that I think I can pick this up, take care of that. This stone was split here on the end, and so there's a remnant crack right about here. So I need to come in at least to make this is planned to be 6 foot, to be at least 6'1". I gotta come in, I got 6'2" here, need to come in probably to 6'1" and see how sound it is. And between that, to cut this off, have that mass there on the end, I'm going to have to pitch a corner, put a line in, I'll have to break in. And so if I'm clear over here, breaking in and breaking down and then breaking this should take care of it. It'll look fine. And so I'm not really clear on how this video will go, the next few videos, because what I've got to do is I got to put a perimeter around this stone. And so first thing I'm going to do is cut this side. I got to cut this panel, okay, going right back to that square in a block, cutting panels. It's that stuff that nobody wants to do because it's boring, okay? I want to do it because I know exactly where I want something to be, and I know what I want it to be, how I want it to turn out. So because I can do it, it's no big deal. I'll saw this line in, I turn the stone around so I could work towards the suction instead of having to rough the suction all the way around. When you cut with a saw, if you cut on this side, the body of the saw will bump into the stone. If you cut to this side, you can cut that face without any worry of interference. It'll still go too deep, you still got to be careful. But I've got my square set to 6 inches going in. I've still got to go down here just a little bit, and that end's just barely touching, so it's really close. But I'll have a 1/4 inch there to put a tool on and break. And what I'll end up doing is I'll break this really hard first, where I've got more meat. I'll break that really hard, and then I'll leave this, and I'll break this side, and I'll break this in hard when I pitch that corner, and that should take care of 90% of that. And then this low spot, I'll have a hump right here, and that hump will be the biggest thing there because everything else around it will be broken off. When you start cutting stone and you start pitching or cutting like this, when you're cutting with a hammer and a handset or a chipper or a tracer, whatever you're using, the mass is going to hold to do what you want it to do. And if you try to break a little piece into a mass, the little piece will just pop off. If you try to break the big piece into the little piece will carry all that with it. So we're going to break this strategically. We'll get this all down and we'll cut a really sharp line. I'll take my chisel and I'll put a stun of good line in there to create that stress riser. Remember me talking about creating stress risers and putting cracks around folds and how you stone cracks? That's why I showed you this. That's why I told you about these things. All this is for a reason. So I'll work on pushing this down, and I'll show some video of it, but me sitting here running the 9-point, running the hand machine, I want you to see how I do it. I don't squeeze the tools to death. I don't have a death grip on these tools. Even if you see me holding them tight like this, I'm not squeezing the tools. I'm holding them so they don't run away. That's the only strength I'm putting into them. If you try to hold these tools and think that you'll do a better job because you squeeze them really tight, all that's going to happen is your fingers are going to be crazy numb, your hands are going to be numb, and they're going to hurt. These tools aren't nice. They don't play games. They'll hurt you. They're made to cut stone, and it's just what they are. So what you want to do is you want to relax, be around those tools, let those tools do the work, and this is only where you're really squeezing it, is there to keep the tool from popping out of your hand. Same thing with a chisel. You don't have to hold it tight, you just have to hold it so that it doesn't go errant and run off where you don't want it to be. So we'll get back to cutting here and cut some stone. And I'll try to work when I can with the light off so y'all can see, but most of the time I gotta have the light on so I can see what I'm doing. The important part will be this line. Got to go down to this red line and have this line be straight with that, and have it be straight from side to side. This interior, we're just going to waste it off. This is going to become a short scotia. We'll go down a little bit and we'll have a really steep scotia. So this isn't critical. If this is low, you know, got a saw mark here, but we want this edge to be nice so we can justify it. So what we'll do is we'll get this edge perfect. What I like to do, the way I was taught to do it, you put a chisel straight on that edge, cut it in. And what'll happen is it'll be tipped a little bit, and tipped a little bit, and tipped a little bit, and tipped a little bit. It'll be all shaggy. You'll have high points you have to clean off. So what I'll do, I've got this very close. There's only a couple places where I've already got it really square. I'll take my chisel and I go back and forth like this. And I'll tip this edge down to that red line and have a perfect edge. Perfect. And then I can take and work that in, put some reference points, and I'll probably do it with plumb blocks. Put my plumb blocks around, just cut that in here. I don't need to do all this. This is just, if I do that, that's wasted time and wasted money. So that's what we're doing right now. But I like to approach a line to get a better edge, cut it away so it's relieved, so there's nothing there, and then tip that last little bit either with like a 2-blade or a bush chisel, tip it right down, and you've got a perfect edge right there, and you can plow it right off and get everything right, and it'll be fantastic. And we'll just use our tri-square square that's set. See, I got to go in about not even an eighth of an inch, just enough to clean that up. And I'll true that up in just a few spots. We'll make a pad big enough for a plumb block, and we set a plumb block and a plumb block and a plumb block. We're down, true it right up, and have a perfect channel along this to have that edge so we can cut the line. When you're doing a corner, and this corner isn't as critical because if we cut in this much here and this much here, this corner is actually going to be in here somewhere. Never cut out. The whole corner will just blow right off. Practice cutting your corners. Cut in. The 1-inch machine, once it's broke in, you got real good control. Remember I said it's going to bevel that edge with a regular chisel. Right down to that line. by doing that, getting a nice bevel on there. By tipping this down to that line, now we can take our other tools and we can just walk that bevel off and cut it off, and we'll leave that line. We produce that corner, that edge, by creating that 45 and leaving that line, that edge right there. And then instead of cutting that edge, we're going to reduce down to that edge and leave it. We created it without stressing it. The reason you do this is that if I put a chisel onto something and I push, that stone has to fracture on both sides. Remember I talked about the little side will break and the big side will hold. Okay, this is the big part, this is the little part. But we're still going to create stress in there, and it's going to crack the stone. By beveling this, the way I was taught, you tip it, whether you use a straight chisel or a bush chisel or whatever, two blade, you bevel it, you create that little edge that if you shine the light on there, there'll be a nice line. But now we can cut away from it, and we never stress that edge. And that really matters later on on important edges, because that edge won't have little fractures in it that can crumble. And that's the problem with just cutting this edge and driving straight in, because the energy of this chisel has to push this off, and as that breaks off, it also imparts stress down below that stays in the stone, and that edge will be all crumbly. We can develop this edge by cutting it away now, leave a perfect 90-degree edge. Then if we want to bevel it, just rub it with a brick or even tip it with a chisel, it's not going to have, likely to have big fractures that fall out. So this is a really, really important way to develop your edges. This is just practice right here, because we're going to cut a scotia in like this. We're going to cut a scotia in the same way over here, so it'll be cut like this. And so our corner will end up being, in here 2 inches or 3 inches or whatever that diagonal is from that corner. But that's how you develop your edge, and that's the smart way to do it. Cut it away so there's nothing for stress, tip it, and then reduce it down and leave that edge, so we'll never actually have to cut straight in. Back to cut. You should be able to see in the light. Can you see this edge? That gives me my nice, and now I'm just working it down, and I'll just square this up, because this will be reference to square this panel up. So I'm going to do that, and I'll use both a wide chisel and just a regular 5/8. What I like to do is I like to clean out a little bit on the interior, so it's got a place to break to. Walk the bevel off. Sometimes you can go a little faster with a wide chisel because you've got extra support. It's real easy with this because you don't have any way to sort of support it with your finger. Out here is to get that edge and catch that corner and cause a problem. This, you end up doing this with it and you've got good support. Just make sure you keep your chisel. Don't just work on one side all the time. Try to keep it rotated. Pretty good right there. It's not quite the line all the way. I got to scrape a little more. I want to waste this heavier off first. Show you a couple more things. We'll wrap this video up. I can't stress enough how well this plain old cheap drainage pipe with a coffee can taped in it, how convertible it is. This allows me to reconfigure really quickly onto my suction. And you can use it on any suction. I like this better than some of the tubing. We use the corrugated drain tubing, and it'll settle out stones, but it also disrupts your gravel. But it also disrupts your airflow, and it's my understanding that it defeats some of your suction draw. So that's not ideal. This, because it's smooth bore, even though I've got square corners, which aren't ideal. If you had a 45, it'd be a lot better. But this is lightweight. If you use the heavier actual sewer pipe, it's really heavy to work with. But this allows you to reconfigure stuff really quickly. Got this edge knocked down. I'm not going to true it in this video because we need to wrap this up before it gets long. I don't want everything to be 30 minutes long. But I'll square this up and get this corner pretty nice. Get this down square, and I'll go down and do several pads to put plumb blocks in to get this line straightened up and make it pretty nice. And then I'm going to practice on this and see if I go an inch down, how hard we can hit it and how it breaks. Should give me a pretty good idea. I'll probably do what I can from the joint. The problem is the joint has some broken stones, so I can't clear it as well. Usually you want to break from the joint up, because if this breaks and runs under, it'll blow that joint off and you got a piece of junk for stone. So I want to see how far a couple of these tall ones carry. They shouldn't blow through to the joint. You got some pretty good height right over there, and see if it goes at least 6 inches roughly, and that means I can break halfway through, putting an inch down, pushing it, and that should mean it's fine to break on the other side, because I'm hoping I can stay at just go 1.5 inches deep instead of 2 to save a little bit of dimension here, give me a little bit more dimension. So working on the base. I did want to mention as well, tipping this. This is how we do an awful lot of our edges, especially when you're developing something ornate. Like if you go back on my other videos and look at the dormant capital, all of those edges on that very ornate, very complicated piece were developed this same way. You didn't cut the edge to start, We develop the edge by working towards the line and reducing to it. And it produces a lot more secure work and a lot more repeatable work without the failures, because like I said, when you cut a line straight in, even though that was marble, when you push straight in, you impart stress on the stone that remains, and that can soften that edge, and then you have a crumble and you have to chase it, and you'll never get ahead. You'll end up wrecking your jobs. You want to reduce to that edge. So this is a really important process to understand and to master. And then at the end, you can go in and clean it off where you're just taking off a little bit of dust to make it nice and straight. So learn to bevel your edges, bevel your stone to create a line, and then cut the line away, cut away the mass in order to leave the edge. You'll have a nice secure edge, nice secure corners. That's the way to do it. That's the way a professional does it. Okay, and don't think you can just saw it in with a saw. The saw generates heat. That heat causes the same stress issues along this fragile edge, and it'll just crumble and fall out. Using high quality, very homogeneous stone like a Georgia blue or a berry gray granite, you've got a lot more inherent security in the stone. If you're doing something that's an ornate stone, has a lot of figure in it, or other kinds of granite like a mahogany or something like that, edges just fall apart and it's a nightmare. So especially if you're not using great stone, you got to bevel to go to an edge, not saw it and not just cut it straight in. It won't work well. So all right, we'll wrap this video up and move on to the next one. My name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with a virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.